Welcome to Software Leaders Uncensored with Steve Taplin. Welcome to Software Leaders Uncensored. I'm your host, Steve Taplin, 25 years serial tech entrepreneur. My new book, Fail Hard, Win Big. I actually have the demo copy here that I'm doing final proofs on. It's actually going live before the end of June here. This is my story of having 30 ventures with 20 failures and 10 wins. The common element of every venture I've done is building custom software for the company to improve operational efficiency, to create a better end user experience and more enterprise value. I'm now the CEO of Sonatify Technology. We are a nearshore software development company. And today, our guest is Brad Buscher out of Hutchinson, Kansas. Brad is not only a veteran, and we thank him for his service, tech leader, consultant, multi-time CIO. Brad, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me on.
Brad, if you would spend a few minutes walking our listeners through your journey, your career journey that you've had and what's led you to your current role.
Yeah, I think a lot of people join tech because they're into it. I joined it because I was told to get a high salary. I joined the military straight out of high school and very quickly realized that software, using technology to help me with my job, was just going to make me a better performer and get data analyzed quicker. So shortly after my second stint was running an analyst shop, and we had to analyze so much data. And when I got to that shop, they were just reading pages and at the end of the day throwing away what they couldn't get to. That I was so mad because I had spent all those years collecting that information to realize half of it was thrown away. So very quickly, I became interested in, can a computer help me solve this problem, right? Can the computer analyze this stuff? So went to school, learned programming, and started, with C code, just writing scripts, right? So that went on for a while. Got out of there and became a chief information programmer for a kiosk company. It was a very fun startup company. We were trying to charge people cell phones and laptops in airports and that sort of a thing. That was very challenging because it was my first remote job before remote jobs were cool. I had to, I think I was on, I finally had 6K and so on. So that was interesting working remote that way. But, what that taught me was...
You're aging yourself here, Brad.
I know. It's a sickness, I guess. But what that taught me was working with different people across the markets, right? And then setting those expectations when you have a development plan, when you have a software plan, and you get on site, your first software demo is always going to fail when you're in front of the customer, right? So you've got to plan and prepare for that. That was a fun few years. And then after that, I kind of got out of the programming thing. I kind of got excited into the infrastructure side and went on to be a technology director to find myself back into a programming situation where we needed APIs written. We needed custom software written because off the shelf just wasn't going to do what our school or our technology piece needed it to do. And then I realized, man, there's a lot of guys who are a lot smarter than I am. They got into the .NET stuff when I didn't. And so then I started managing those software programs, started hiring people. The rest of my career since then has really been in finding people the right solutions, whether it's an off-the-shelf solution, something we can customize, or start from scratch and right from the beginning. My advice to anybody who thinks, I'm going to develop a Microsoft Word application from scratch from the very beginning, I wish you luck. It's a very challenging. It's a good dream, right? But it's a very challenging prospect to have all of those integrations, all the different ways to interact with a piece of software. It's just hard to develop that, and it's very, very expensive. So yeah, that's kind of my career in a nutshell.
I appreciate that. And, Brad, I think being a CIO, CTO is certainly the top of the food chain in tech. And it's also a very difficult role. Tech leaders are blamed for everything. Private equity comes in and, often has their own tech leaders they want to bring. What's been your secret as a multi-time CIO as far as being able to get your next position, your next role? Because last time I checked, applying on LinkedIn doesn't work very well.
No, that works miserably, actually. The only way really is relationship. Again, back to the tech thing. I was always a fairly unique tech person because I wasn't the kind of guy you stick in a closet and have them go program. I think that's why I got out of programming. I'm much more relational. I enjoy this part, the podcast type thing. I enjoy face-to-face with customers, face-to-face with my clients. And really it's about winning trust, right? It's understanding their problem. Once a client knows that you have their best interest at heart, they will trust you with what they need. And as a CIO with the companies I've worked for, when I go to a vendor, when I go to a consultant, I want that person to love my company more than I do because I'm paying them to see where I can't see, right? And so I try to do that. Of course, I don't know everything, but certainly I think I'm well adept at helping people think through problems. And oftentimes you find with just some simple conversations, those tech leaders that are in place, they have the solutions. They're just buried in there, right? And you've got to help draw that out. So,
Now, what are some current projects you're working on? Some fun stuff.
which is an exciting thing to do. So taking companies and completely migrating their entire environment, right? So infrastructure, ERP, non-ERP
Now, is
apps.
this pre-M&A, post-M&A?
It's the gamut, right? Most of it is post.
Okay.
And then what we find is that in these scenarios where it's post, suddenly there's a pre for the next thing, cropping up inside of it. So there's all sorts of roadmaps, timelines, timeframes, and integrating all of that. I was telling someone the other day, I haven't really had a position like this one that made my brain work so fast and with so much different information inflow since I've been in the service. That was a very information inflow heavy time. And this role is also that.
Now, how your time in the service, how has that helped mold you as a tech leader?
So my time in the service, again, it helped me teach that people are the thing. The computer can do stuff, but the people are the thing. And again, if you care about people, I had some really good leaders who cared about me. They could have written me off. They could have thrown me to the wolves. But instead, they saw something which I didn't see in myself. They saw something and they fed into that. They gave me ups. My goal with every junior tech, every programmer, everything I'm involved with is when we leave that relationship, when we move on, that person has risen above where they thought they could. That's my goal. So really, yeah, I'm a technology leader,
Phenomenal.
but it's really about growing people.
So talk to us about your engineering team, how many you got, how you have it structured, where they're located.
So we are not centrally located at all. We're all remote.
Okay.
And we found that works for us because we're more interested in the result versus the time clock. And so, with our engineers, we have some that are temporary. They come on board for a couple of months, they write an API or two and they're gone. And then we have some that are permanent and they range the whole skill that you would need in software development, the whole skill set. But what we find is that when people are passionately bought into the project and they understand not just the roadmap, but the overall goal and how they play into that goal, I don't have to worry about how long they work. All I have to do is make sure that the work that they're doing is quality and done. So being decentralized is actually really, really easy. And it also helps me find talent anywhere. I don't care where people live. I want the work done. And if they're capable of doing that work and they can communicate, that's a challenge, right? If they can communicate, then I don't care where they work. It's fine.
So have you had challenges working with worldwide teams when you're dealing with different time zones, different cultures, the ability, do you feel all the collaboration you need is still there?
It is, but there are challenges. And they're cultural. You'd like there not to be cultural challenges, but there are. I am one who tends to speak very, very fast. And I understand that when I'm speaking with somebody from another language background, me speaking fast could be a challenge to them understanding me. And it goes both ways. Some accents are really, really easy for me to understand, and some are like, I know what you're saying. Please slow down so I can understand. It's not a knock on who they are or where they came from. It's, but in order to have that communication, we've got to empathize with our listener, with our audience. The other challenge is diversity can be a challenge unless you embrace that. So certain cultures, technology backgrounds, and how they're developed in their culture, they're good for specific tasks. And if you know that as a leader, then you can pick where you pull that resource from to get the most bang for your buck, really. And it's not about dollars, it's about efficiency and quality.
So if your core team is US based and you're using resources around the world, have you found if you only have an hour or two overlap for that collaboration, how have you worked through those challenges?
So I have had the unique privilege of being able to demand, suggest, encourage that people work on a similar time zone. No matter where they're from. So within the continental United States, we work basically Eastern through Mountain, roughly. We have some people in California, but if you are there, please try to work on one of these other time zones. It's just a little bit more efficient. And then that bleeds into overnight work. Some programs, they can work overnight and that's fine. I need their team leader to work on my time zone so we can have those meetings efficiently.
Gotcha.
Not everybody wants to do it, but some people love it.
So throughout your ventures of leading technology and organizations, have you found the right balance of core team, engineering team that is in-house employees versus, what you may contract with for flex demand and other things? What mix have you found to be the most effective?
I think I'm still looking, to be honest, and because it's varied, right? Every project demands different.
Yep.
For me, I don't know every ins and outs of all the different platforms and all the different code bases anymore. I just don't. But
It's
my
pretty
leaders,
hard to keep up with all of them.
it is, it is. But my leaders do, right? My API guy, I got a a full stack guy who helps me wrap my brain around what everybody else is telling me. I got my DB guys, my API guys, and so on. And really, it's their challenge. If that core team can communicate well, then it's whoever they bring on board to solve a problem, I'm fine with usually.
Okay, gotcha. So pre-show, you were telling me your ideal tech stack. You like the Microsoft
Yeah.
ecosystem. Tell us why.
Well, cost. So cost can skyrocket the more you get non-integrated third-party apps and trying to make them play nice together. It's not cheap. Microsoft's not cheap. They know they're not cheap, right? But when you can develop all within one stack, it really makes it efficient. And so many things are pre-done for you. I mean, back in the day when you were taking, I took an assembly code class in college, and I couldn't ever imagine programming in assembly anymore. So I used somebody else's
I'm
written
trying to
code.
remember, is assembly pre-COBOL or after?
Oh,
Now we're both aging ourselves.
I've been stuffing registries and trying to pull a character out of a registry, right? But I was like, there's got to be a better way. And so the ecosystem of Microsoft has made it really, really nice, whether you're on-prem or cloud-based, that you can have resources from anywhere and they work together. Because they're Microsoft, they work together. So that your integration time between your apps and your different requirements is easier. APIs tend to be a little bit more efficient that way. It's never perfect, right? Sometimes I do have to go out to a third party and tag on, maybe because of a customer requirement, they want different IAM, right? They need different security metrics or whatever. And programming into those, that's challenging. So yeah, that's why I like Microsoft. They offer about everything.
So earlier you were talking about you're working on a lot of M&A work. So when you're combining companies and their tech systems that are often on multiple tech stacks, are you typically looking to consolidate those tech stacks? How do you usually attack those problems? And I imagine no two situations are similar.
That's a fact. Well, we try to advise clients where possible to combine that tech stack, to make it simplified. Again, for cost. Complexity breeds failure. It just can. And so to remove the points of failure in a system, we try to remove legacy things and so on. But sometimes you just have to say, this is just what it is. And then you need your good API guys who can make those systems talk, right? And that's always a challenge because this thing over here is database driven. This thing over here is flat file driven. And there's some great softwares out there. But at some point, someone's got to put their fingers to a keyboard and develop something that makes these things work. And that challenge is just never going away. It just never is.
So being a CIO here in 2025, we're certainly in some interesting times. What's the biggest challenge you're facing right now?
People's misunderstanding of AI. So my take on it, and people listening to your podcast may go, Brad doesn't know what he's talking about, which is fine. Maybe I don't.
Brad,
okay.
I'm actually convinced if we took 10 smart tech leaders and put them in a room,
we'd argue.
And each asked them what AI is, we would get 10 different answers.
Oh, I agree. I think some of the things I see that are being sold to me as AI is just very, very fast processing of the same things we always did before. If you want to say that, then I guess the scripts I was writing way back in the service were AI. I had the computer doing the work for me because I wrote the script that could do it. Now, was that AI? No, it really wasn't. The large language model, which really what most people refer to as AI these days, right? The large language model stuff, the generative, that's some impressive things going on. Scary. Some of the security around that's kind of scary, but it certainly has made getting an idea to paper much quicker, and then you can fine tune. So your prototype can be way faster. Prototyping is lightning fast these days.
The game's definitely changed there, no doubt.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's a balance, right? I'm a relationship person. I'm a people person. I don't want the computer always doing the work for me unless it's complex, repeatable, and then I have the computer do it because it's going to make less errors than I will, right? And so whenever I can do that, yeah, have at it. But high level thinking, AI is not there for me yet.
So certainly being a CIO, you're always battling managing costs and scope creep. What have been your strategies to deal with that, especially with non-techative executives or board members or others?
Yeah. You never want a conversation really to be, oh, by the way, this is going to cost. You don't want that to be like the first sentence out of your mouth, but that's always the elephant in the room, right?
The CFO's in the room, that's what they're going to be screaming.
That is what they want to know. But just really, helping people understand from the very beginning the impact of the decision they're making. And for myself, I have to have people remind me, hey, Brad, you realize what you just decided to do? Well, Maybe completely otherwise, right? In some aspects, right? It's like, do you want the business to be successful? Well, this is just the cost. I'm sorry, but it is. In other aspects, there are cheaper ways. Most people watching your podcast have probably seen the diagram of the horse. On the back end of the horse, it's like stick drawn, and on the front of the horse, it's like an actual picture of a horse. It's like, so here's cheap, here's expensive. Where on here do you want to be? And let's face it, for each business use case, that can be different. At some point, the sketch diagram over here on this side, perfectly fine, right? So why spend a lot of money on that? On the other hand, maybe your business requires a full blown photo of the horse. Well, that drives other decisions, right? But to control that cost is really monitoring that what the customer has asked for is what they're being delivered. And then as a program, as an application, as an environment matures, things grow. And then every once in a while, you've got to audit that environment. Are we still where we need to be? Is there a more efficient way to store this data? Because at first it may seem like, oh, let's just store everything in live data. Well, eventually you realize that's really expensive. So then it's like, what can we move to dead data? Right? Can we move to solid storage? Do we even have to rent storage, or can we just delete it? IT is never a one and done, set it up, walk away environment. It's just not. So it takes the circle back. It takes coming back to it, reevaluating, and honest communication.
So, Brad, what would you say is the hardest part of your job as a CIO today?
Hardest part. So it's funny because you mentioned the whole thing about on LinkedIn and that sort of thing. When you post a job out, you get a bazillion applicants. Getting through those applicants is tough. And then finding applicants that their resume matches what they actually know. That's hard.
Because everybody's doing AI generated resumes at this point.
Well, yeah,
based on
and
job descriptions.
it's not helpful, right? So my advice to somebody who's doing that would be write your own resume, because you're going to get yourself into a job that you hate, that you can't do. And that's going to be miserable. Better to be, again, honest and just let it be what it's going to be. So talent acquisition is tough. It's a time consuming thing. Retention, not so much, because of the way the market is currently. And then after talent acquisition, I would say the next biggest thing is stakeholder buy-in when change management has to happen.
Mm-hmm.
You would be shocked. I am shocked at the age of some of the legacy systems that I see out there in the market. I don't know how they operate.
Well, and I think the airline industry and has been a huge challenge in that industry, that a lot of issues have come to light lately, which are scary.
Yeah. I saw a Windows 3.1 computer the other day, and I was like, I don't think I've seen that since like 95. It's been a long
Was that a relic in a movie, or you actually saw it?
No, it was functioning. It was sitting there powered on. I was like, what do you guys do with that? I was like, we never power it off. It just sits there. Okay.
So, Brad, if you have a friend or family member that is early in their career and wants to be a CIO or CTO, what would you tell them?
I would say don't aim for that. That's what I would tell them. What they need to do is find out what in IT really is their passion. So, I started out as a programmer, a user, and then a programmer, and moved on from there. Infrastructure is more my bag. I can do the programming, but wasn't really a super good programmer, I guess. Let your career develop in the way that makes you the happiest. Some guys I have found, guys, gals, whatever, I have found are super, super happy being a help desk technician, which is totally fine. Absolutely fine. Nothing wrong with that. And that, if that's what you want to do. But if you aim for CIO or CTO or whatever, I think what happens is you try to get that title before you have the experience to do it. And that sometimes can be good, but sometimes then, you learn
hard role to fake.
Well, yeah,
to say the least, because you're on the hook for everything.
And people are looking at you to be the expert in those decisions. And if you lead somebody wrong, there can be some forgiveness, but you got to have a lot of wins to cover up a baddie. You just do. So I never aimed to be a CIO. I didn't really even know what it was. Thought it was kind of way too up there, right? But as I progressed in my career, I found I liked the decision-making, the leading, the policy management better. And then this is just a title to me, whatever. I'll take a title. I don't care. But that's not why I'm here. I'm not here to have the title. I'm here because I think I have something that I can help organizations thrive with, and I can help develop on, junior personnel.
Gotcha. Now, so a lot of us, older guys, I hate to put myself in that category, but I'm there.
Yeah.
We learn from our bumps, our bruises, our failures. That's what my book I Have Coming Out is about. What's one brutal lesson that you've gone through that you wish you would have learned earlier in your career?
Man, that's such a good topic, because I always wish I could have learned from somebody else's mistake. Because when you make them yourself, they hurt, right? The most brutal one I did, this is going to sound silly, but I was doing some network administration, and I really thought I could wipe out a SAN because I thought I had it set up right. backed up data, so on and so forth. And by the time you hit the go button, it was too late.
Yikes. How long
And
was
if you,
that outage?
well, I thought I could bring it back up quickly. So the system itself was back up within like a 2 hours, right?
All
What
right.
wasn't back up was all the data. That took a long time. We were just off of tape and onto hard drives, but they still weren't fast hard drives at the time. And that's a mistake I won't ever make again.
So outside of the technical error, what was the true lesson there?
The true lesson was don't be in such a hurry, because being in a hurry can slow you down, right? Sometimes taking a pause, thinking through the entire thing again, is this really what I want to do, is faster. It's the whole, hare and the turtle thing, which, we hear as a kid, right? You hear that story over and over again. Maybe you tell your own kids or your grandkids or nephews, nieces, whatever. But it's not really about going slow. It's about thinking slowly about your process. And at some point you do have to commit, and you have to know that if I commit to this, can I recover? And if you don't test those processes, you have a very painful lesson when it doesn't work. Most of the time it does, right? But you never learn anything from when it does. No, had I done that and everything come back up like it was supposed to, I wouldn't have had any trouble. But I also wouldn't have learned. Check your backups, idiot.
Well,
Right?
and that's good advice. And young, smart, aggressive tech professionals sometimes don't always take that deep breath to think through it more before taking action. So that's great advice. Brad, thank you so much for getting uncensored with us today. This has been a great conversation.
Enjoyed myself. Thank you.
For other CIOs, CTOs, and tech leaders out there, any final advice you have?
Enjoy your work and take time off, because some people live to work. That's their life. I work so I can live. And I think, especially for guys like us who are getting up there a little ways, it's really about life balance. Work really hard when you're at work, right? And dedicate your whole brain to that. But then when you're not at work, let your brain connect to something else, something completely different. Family, friends, a hobby, something else. If you find, everybody has a bad day, okay? Some people have bad weeks, projects get stressful. But if you find that you're dreading Monday morning, month after month, it's time to maybe take a break or do something else.
No doubt.
And listen to yourself, right?
Life's too short to do something you hate. And
For
I
sure.
believe you can't be the best out there if you don't truly love what you're doing.
That's a fact.
Great advice. Brad, this has been fantastic. Thanks for being on. That's it for this episode of Software Leaders Uncensored. I'm Steve Taplin. Stay bold and keep building, everyone. That's a wrap. Another great episode of Software Leaders Uncensored. Thank you guys so much for listening. I really appreciate it. It's a lot of fun doing this show. I love talking with great tech leaders. As a side note, if you're interested, check out my new book, Fail Hard, Win Big. This is the story of how I built 30 companies, failed on 20, and turned 10 into multi-million-dollar wins. The common thread with all of them was custom software. Also, if you need software development help out there, my company, Sonatify Technology, we deliver world-class software development engineers out of Latin America. We have a solid track record of helping companies launch better products and faster. Thanks again for listening. Appreciate it and appreciate you.